Hello, today is Monday, October 13th. Welcome to episode 513 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Advisory Board member Lester Munson. I'm joined today by founder and executive director Jamil Jaffer and NSI senior fellows Matt Hayden and Amy Mitchell. This is such a big day. We're not messing around with normal fellows. We're only going with senior fellows.
A lot of seniority.
Folks, a lot of stuff going on in the Middle East today. President Trump just addressed the Israeli Knesset. The remaining living hostages held by Hamas after the terrorist attacks of 2 years ago have been released into freedom through the International Committee of the Red Cross and returned to their homes. Palestinian prisoners in Israel have been released. The 20-point plan outlined by President Trump is being implemented as we speak. This is actually fantastic news. A lot of reasons for people to be happy and optimistic. A huge win for the American president. We've discussed this situation several times over the last couple of weeks. It is true, but this seems to be a great moment. Today, we're going to try and pull back a little bit and talk about the implications of what this means for President Trump, for U.S. diplomacy, for some of the other challenges in the world. The ones that immediately come to mind, of course, are the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Also, the pending large potential trade deal between the U.S. and China. Perhaps even how the U.S. is approaching the challenge from Venezuela and some of these drug gangs. Jamil, I want to go to you first. You're the founder. It's your point of privilege here. This is a big day in national security world. What are your thoughts about the implications of this for these broader concepts, these broader issues?
Well, look, I mean, I think obviously if things are calming down in the Middle East, and we've obviously seen significant takedowns of Hezbollah, Hamas itself, Iranian defenses, the attack on the Iran nuclear program, the Houthis seem more restive at this point. In a lot of Syria's changed governments. And so in a lot of ways, the Middle East seems to be calming down if, in fact, this war is coming to an end. And we don't know for sure. We have seen very good signs. The Israelis have withdrawn to their positions. We've seen the hand over the 20 living hostages. There's still another 28 deceased hostages that whose bodies need to be handed back. And then you need to see Hamas, reduce its weapons or give up all of its weapons and give up power. We'll see if any of that happens. But good signs. And so if the Middle East calms down, it might give us the opportunity to focus on the still burning conflict in Ukraine, which President Trump had planned to end. And look, I'm thrilled he's ended one war in the Middle East, or hopefully ended a war. He still hasn't ended the war in Ukraine, which he said would happen before he even took office. So we need to see that come to an end. And we need to see that come to an end in a positive way for Ukraine. So maybe the president, having seen Putin double down against his wishes, maybe is going to support Ukraine now more than he has in the past. And then, obviously the problem with China, which is the president really wants to do a trade deal with China, and China is going the opposite direction, kind of like Vladimir Putin. President Xi is doubling down on economic aggression towards the U.S. and our allies with this rare earths effort. President Trump came out swinging last week, dropped the stock market significantly. He now sort of softened that by saying, Xi just may have miscalculated or made a mistake. But Xi isn't backing down, so we'll see what happens. But it may give us a space to focus on some of these other issues.
Amy, what are your thoughts about particularly the mechanisms Trump is using here? Kind of this friends and family approach to diplomacy, special envoys. His son-in-law played a notable role here. What kind of lessons can we draw from that?
Well, I would say first send Jared to Moscow. I mean, Jared
Right.
is clearly the winner here. And it was his kind of intervention that got us to this point. What that intervention was, we don't really have details of, right? But Steve Witkoff has been trying for 7-8 months now, we're in October, to try to get a deal. And, nothing really shifted until Jared got involved. And we saw Jared and Ivanka at the square in Tel Aviv on Saturday night. They're standing with the president today. I would also note that, one of the things about the president is he's really become the deterrent for the United States, right? You don't know what he's going to do next. And so, that has kind of, from bombing Iran back this summer to now kind of forging this peace agreement in the Middle East. If I were Vladimir Putin or Maduro or Xi, I'd be kind of rethinking my plans a little bit, because he's been so erratic in how he has handled each situation.
Yeah, I think
Matt,
that's exactly right. Les, just real quick. I mean, I think the madman theory of international politics. I mean, it's actually working with Donald Trump, right? And nobody knows what he's going to
Right.
do. Nobody knows like what if he's going to freak out, and They're all afraid of that happening, so they're all sort of walking on eggshells around him, which is helping him get things done. It's actually kind of wild.
Yeah.
Matt, let's get your thoughts on this. One of the cliches people like to say is that the Chinese are thinking 100 years ahead. President Trump has 3 years and maybe 3 months left in power. Can this approach work with a challenge like what we're seeing from Beijing in the long run? Can it work? Can it work with Vladimir Putin, who's probably happy to try to wait out a tough United States policy on Russia? Can you replicate the success that Trump has had in the Middle East on some of these larger questions?
You can. It's just not a canned approach. The strength of the Trump administration literally doing what it sees as whatever it takes on any given day to get these things progressed, not only build a rapid muscle memory for taking on this type of diplomacy, but it also shows a seriousness in where they're going to go and how they see these outcomes. So if you're saying, I want peace between the Middle East partners, and you're willing to go this far, what are you willing to do to get peace in Ukraine? What are you willing to do to see a quieting of the conflict across Asia and the United States? And so it's going to put forward a seriousness, even in a tone where you can't necessarily predict, but it's going to cascade into post-Trump era, because you're setting up vehicles that literally allow countries to be more successful than they currently are. And so as a national security professional, I would love for everyone to turn and say, we're safer, therefore it's better. But they're actually saying we can improve the wealth of your nation and have a security partnership. And that hook is something that is going to outlast this presidency. And that is something that really carries forward with whoever takes the reins next.
So for what it's worth, I think these are all excellent points. I think what we underplay a little bit was two things. The Israelis ran the table against Iranian proxy forces in the region over the last year.
Totally.
A stunning feat in Lebanon, in Gaza, even against the Houthis, striking adversaries in Tehran, somehow, like by remote control, blowing up bad guys in the heart of darkness, as it were. And also the Trump administration, President Trump, willing to strike the Iranian nuclear weapons program explicitly using U.S. military force, really changed the game here. So let's not forget about the willingness to go metal on metal and actually demonstrate that the U.S. is committed to doing these things and will change the facts on the ground. And so I think that's what we're gonna need to see in the Ukraine question as well.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to kind of punch Putin in the face, right? And at some point, and that will shift the dynamic. Right now, he's counting on kind of the nuclear deterrent to stop NATO, to stop the United States. And I think, Trump can take this and kind of punch back now more forcefully, because Putin and Xi are being cornered a little bit more. I think Venezuela is a totally different question.
All right, yeah, look, I think. Well, no, but I think Amy's right here. But I do want to say something you said, Les, which is this idea that we're going metal on metal. I mean, I'm not sure the Iranian attacks were sort of metal on metal. We knew they weren't going to be able to fire back because the Israelis had wiped out their air defenses. It's another thing to be sort of go toe to toe against a power that's actually going to fight back. And I think that's the difference here. Look, I do think it's important. President Trump's put 200 troops down on the ground in Israel. No American president's been willing to do that before. That, I think, is a key part of getting this deal done. And look, if in fact what the president's going to do is double down on Ukraine and give them what it takes to win, and really, as Amy says, put Putin at a disadvantage, that could change the war in a massive way and actually force Putin to the table on a fair deal. But the same that has to be done in Asia, and we got to strengthen Taiwan. We got to make sure that we will defend Taiwan and put forces forward into the theater, so that if in fact there was actually a fight, we could get there in time, which today we couldn't.
All right, the one thing I'm going to disagree with you on, Jamil, is the idea that you can do it by giving more weapons to Ukraine. The Biden administration tried that It didn't
Nope,
work.
they didn't.
Yeah, they could have done a little bit more.
They half-assed it.
What it's really going to take is NATO responding to these overflights of NATO countries with drones and MiGs, and really respond in a very tough way. As Matt said, punch them in the face. That's going to be required. Okay,
I think
that's a wrap. Thanks always to Natalie Varma. Say it again, Jamil. Go ahead.
Amy said it. Amy said punch him in the face.
Oh, Amy.
I was much more diplomatic. I did not say punch.
My bad. Amy, thank you for keeping us pugilistic here. That's a wrap. Thanks always to Natalie Varma, Taylor Lane, Claude Jennings, the NSI staff for the help in producing today's episode. Join us on Wednesday, October 15th for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. We're on YouTube. Check out our channel for a video of today's episode. If you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.